Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Maul.
And as advertised, this is our mid-season NFL review. If I was a Bears fan, I would be pointing off, yelling at someone in the stands while the play is happening behind me. Only get upset. We just filmed the college episode, and we're mocking Pops for that. He was still a little salty. Just a little salty.
Only difference is we're not necessarily winning at this point in the season. At least the Bears were winning at that point in the game.
So we'll talk about it. We'll go AFC first and sort of take a look at where we thought teams would finish, and we'll go from there. So we all had the Chiefs going in number 1. All of us except for Pops. Pops had the Raiders at 2. We had the Chargers. Then we had everyone had the Broncos as the dead last team. Pops had the Chargers number 3. So he just flip-flop on them, which now it sort of looks like the Broncos could be, just based upon the play of their defense and sort of the wins, they could easily compete for that number 2 slot, possibly by the end of the year, just depending on how they play the Raiders and the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, they're number 2 right now. So I think they're very equivalent teams. And if Bo Nix keeps progressing the way that he is, I mean, they do look like a better team. They both have their offensive struggles, but they're both pretty solid on defense. And I mean, Bo Nix is surprising me. Like at the beginning of the season, it was like, yeah, this is kind of what we expected. But it was, I think a lot of that was just, rookie type stuff. And he's progressing every week, and he keeps looking better every week. So they're a decent team with that good defense.
100%. I want to throw it to you because I brought this point up to you of, we have made mention of it. The Chiefs are 7-0. I did not see them being the last unbeaten. It wouldn't have surprised me if you told me it worked out that way, but looking at the rest of their schedule, you're sitting back and you're like, dude, I can actually see them running the table. To which you said something that I thought was hilarious, which was in 20 years from now, and I'll let you take it.
Yeah, because you're thinking about, like, I wasn't alive when the Dolphins went undefeated. Like, you weren't alive. Like, but in our minds, we look back and go, like, man, that must have just been such an amazing thing to witness and watch. And like I would have loved to have been alive when that happened. And I was thinking the exact same thing you were when you're looking at it and you're going, man, like the Chiefs aren't even that good this year. Like they're really, they look super beatable. Patrick Mahomes is probably having like one of his worst seasons he's ever played. But this is the year, like, they'll go undefeated. Watch. And, 20 years from now, like, our kids are going to be like, oh, man, you guys were alive in that undefeated Chiefs season? Like, they must have been amazing. And you're going to be like, yeah, like, on average, they were so good in the years surrounding that year. But the year they went undefeated, they sucked.
They weren't even the best Chiefs team that I watched.
They were terrible.
Terrible. It's nuts because now, for as bad as Mahomes has played, like the real hero that keeps getting left out is that defense. Dude, no one can figure out Spag and the Chiefs defense. And as long as they keep playing well, they're going to keep winning games. They've kept them and the refs have kept them in some games. Like,
I agree. However, because it's the NFL, they're not going to three-peat unless they change something or get some other piece that puts them over the edge. I'm not saying that they won't, period, dot, but like the NFL has proven over and over again, one, how hard it is to three-peat, but then two, to get away with suboptimal play for any long period of time. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to make the playoffs. They'll probably make a run, but like, I just don't see them pulling it off all the way to the end and making the three-peat with the level of play that they are putting in, week out.
So who's the team that you sit back right now and you go, that's the team that will end it for them?
The Ravens.
Where's the Ravens?
The Ravens. Or the Lions in the Super Bowl, or the Vikings in the Super Bowl, or the Niners in the Super Bowl. Now, the Niners haven't played great, but like again, the Chiefs have been playing very suboptimal, and I can absolutely see them not. The Bills, dude. How about the Bills?
That's my team. I think it's the Bills.
Yeah, like all of those teams, I can see showing up on a day that the Chiefs play like they played against the Raiders, and they're gonna lose. And again, it's gonna be one of those like, wow, what a great run, dude. They were so close, but like, and again, unless they change something, right? Like the D Hop edition seems, I think, maybe bigger than it is. We'll find out here, but unless like something changes fundamentally, where like they get a real big boost on either side of the ball that makes like a significant holy crap, now they're for real, they're not going to keep getting away with suboptimal play all the way to the end. The NFL has proven so many times that you just can't do that and end up at the top.
Well, you brought up the Bills. That's probably one of our bigger misses is the AFC East. So, as you said, they're the only team, the Bills, that have more than 2 wins in the AFC East. We all had the Jets winning the division. We all had the Dolphins, then the Bills, and the Pats in that order. And the Bills are by far the best team. The Jets are terrible, which so much of it we had thrown on their defense, how good they were. They needed a quarterback. This year, Rodgers, I don't want to say has played poorly. He hasn't played great. Like, he played better than some of the quarterbacks in the league? 100%. He's not playing like Will Levis. It's not he's trashed them games, but that defense is absolutely god awful. Like, they're terrible. They cannot stop anyone. People, last game, Rodgers drives them down the field. They get a touchdown. They are ahead of the Pats. And what does the defense do? Allow the Pats to go right down the field and score. It was like Rodgers did what he needed to do. The defense could not stop anything. So, especially for us, midseason review, I look back at that and I'm just like, you know what? It reminds me of that meme of Bill Burr and that guy who's like,
Pete Davidson.
What? Yeah, Pete Davidson. He's like, you bet on the Jets.
Who bets on the Jets?
Who bets on the Jets? They're good. They're going to be there. And he's like, no, they're not. They've never been there. And it's like, that is the embodiment of the Jets right now. They've never been there. I need to stop thinking the Jets are going to arrive one week.
And like, not to say that this made a difference or a huge difference one way or the other, but like firing Robert Saleh when you did is a disgrace to like your organization. Do I think he was the problem? Absolutely not. Like, they were having offensive struggles at that point in the season. So how is firing your defensive minded head coach going to fix anything? That being said, I didn't really know that they were even considering that, right? Like that was a big surprise to me, that if the season ends how it's been going, and at the end of the season they were like, yeah, dude, Saleh, you're gone, I have no problem with that. That is not the issue. But when it happened, it just seemed so out of place and like unnecessary at the time, when you were just like, what was the point of that? Like, what did you really expect to accomplish there? I don't understand why those things happen. Now, obviously, there's all of the rumors and gossip that like, oh, it was Rodgers and Rodgers is running everything behind the scenes. Fine, whatever. But like, that's why you're in last place, because you do stupid things like that in the middle of the season.
100%.
Yeah, because again, you brought it up. Like, they should have beat the Patriots because they let them drive down. Rodgers got them in position against the Broncos at the end of that game, and then they missed a field goal to go ahead. And it's just like, what are you supposed to do?
100%. AFC North, we all had the Ravens winning the division, which looks like a good pick right now, although the Ravens just dropped their last game against the Browns. I had the Browns number 2. You and Pops had the Bengals, and then I had the Bengals number 3, Steelers 4. You're the only guy that had the Steelers not being in the bottom of the division. You actually had the Browns, which is looking better and better each week. The Steelers could easily be the number 2 team there. The Bengals have shown, at best, I would call inconsistent play. At no point have I looked at the Bengals offense this year and it resembles anything like it has the last few years. The biggest thing for this division is, in terms of the Ravens, Henry is exactly who he thought he was at the Titans. It's just not even better now with the Ravens when they line up an eye. He's unstoppable. I think he scored a touchdown almost every week this season, if not multiple, either from running or catching it.
Yeah, I was dead wrong about that. I attest to the coaching. Is I was very adamant that I didn't think Henry was going to succeed in that type of offense, and they've changed the offense enough to make him be who, like you said, who we all knew he was, and they're playing out of their mind. I mean, right now the Ravens are in second, so I didn't predict this out of the Steelers, but as far as midseason review goes, I think the Bengals are playing okay football. It's tough to work your way back when you start 0-3 like that, just because again they had no business losing to the Patriots at the beginning of the season, but the Browns are obviously the struggle bus in that division, but it definitely could still work its way out here to how I thought, where I don't know if the Steelers are going to fall all the way to third, but I do think the Ravens are the best team in that division by far.
Then we get to the AFC South. You're the only surprise one. You had the Colts outlasting the Texans, which it sounds nuts. I think may work out for you.
Now because that they're going to bench Richardson for sure.
Yes. With Flacco coming in, you look, no Nico Collins, no Stephon Diggs. The Texans offense is going to take a huge hit. Joe Flacco 100% gives the Colts the best chance to win. I sit back and I look at it and I go, I think that Maul's going to hit a home run on this one, because I can easily see as the season progresses with the injuries for the Texans, the Colts get the advantage and win the division.
I'll just say Anthony Richardson has duped me twice now, because he is playing exactly how I think we all thought he was going to play last year. Coming out as a rookie, we were just like, what's with this Mel Kiper ranking? Like, he was average in college, and all of a sudden he's going to be a superstar in the pros. Like, what is going on? This guy's crazy. He comes out like the first 6 weeks of the season last year, and he's playing really well. And everybody's like, maybe we were wrong about Anthony Richardson. Now he gets hurt, and it kind of gives this like big break pause as far as like what we were seeing on him. So then when we were coming into this season, my rankings, I was just like, Anthony Richardson looked a heck of a lot better than I was going to give him credit for. And if the Colts could take the Texans all the way to the last game of the season with Gardner Minshew, if they've got a good quarterback like Anthony Richardson, again, when I say that, I'm talking about what I saw out of him year one. It's like they could win the division, and I was kind of just mixing it up there. And then he comes out this season, and you're like, oh, that's the Anthony Richardson I thought we were going to see. But, then it might work out for me, because it's clear as day. Like, there's a clear ceiling on that team when Anthony Richardson is the quarterback. And it's a lot lower than when Joe Flacco is your quarterback.
What's your take on him pulling himself out of the game?
Wild. I've never seen it before. Like, and this is just one of those where it's like, who's in charge of that man? Like, who has allowed him to get to this point in the season with, and I don't know what it was. Like, is it just straight poor conditioning? Is it an attitude problem? Like, I don't know what the answer is there, or like a third thing that we're not seeing or hearing. But like, either way, someone in that organization needs to be more in charge of him and treat him like the child he's acting like, if they really want him to be the professional quarterback that he should be. Because at this point, you're not going to outlive that in the NFL for very long, unless you change your attitude real quick.
Yeah. I remember it was one of those like lasting images. I remember on Monday Night Football, Brett Favre, they had a picture of his thumb, and he had broke his thumb, and they had a pin that was inserted into his thumb. It was like outside of his thumb that was going the lengthwise, and they had wrapped it up, and he was played every play. It's like he's slinging a football 50 times that game with a thumb that literally is broken, and it's got a pin shoved all the way down it. And you think about all the quarterback play that guys have just gotten beat up, trying to stay in a game through injuries. And my man runs, which I get it. He ran a far length of the field, but one of the guys, I don't really like ESPN that much. I forget, I don't even know what the guy's name is. He's an offensive lineman on Get Up. He was like, yo, man, I play offensive line. I don't get any breaks. He's like, the entire game. At no point have you ever seen an offensive lineman like, yo, coach, come get me. I'm tired. It's like, that doesn't happen. Like, you are expected to play. And McAfee even called him out. He's like, yo, dude, this speaks volumes to the rest of your team. Like, you are the captain. You are the leader, which I think Steichen did the perfect thing, which was like, enough. Like, you want to pull yourself to the bench? It's like, remember the Titans. Like, I can't guard him. You gonna go out there and play or not? Yeah. To the bench. Like, sorry, dog. Yeah. You're in. No, I don't want them to gain another yard. That, to me, Joe Flacco, which we said it the first few weeks. It's like when Flacco came in, we're like, dude, Flacco's better than Richardson. They need to just leave Flacco in, that he gives them the best chance to win. And Steichen said it yesterday. He's like, Flacco gives us the best chance to win games, so that's who we're going with going forward.
He absolutely does. And honestly, at this point, unless they just start dropping game after game after game with Flacco, Richardson's done, dude, for the year at least. Like, there's no way you can now make that switch back to Richardson if Flacco comes out and starts winning you games. And if you do, then you're dooming yourself. Which at this point, only 2 games back in the division, like, I wouldn't do it.
They can easily win the AFC South. And that's the bigger question, is what do the Colts do if let's say that Flacco does what he does at Cleveland last year, gets them to the playoffs, regardless if they get bounced early or often, because they could easily, be in a divisional champ. They'll play that first wild card, which who knows who you may draw in that. You could get, the Steelers, which would be a tough game for them. You got TJ Watt. You have a good defense on that side of the ball. Who knows how Russell Wilson's playing in there, which, side note, I'll give credit to where credit's due. After the first few weeks, I was like, I don't know why he is switching to Wilson. Wilson plays better from a throwing aspect than Fields.
He looks like a better quarterback.
Yes. He may not have the legs that got Fields out of trouble, but that's really the only reason that Fields didn't look as bad as he possibly could, is because his arm wasn't there and he made himself look better through running. But the second that a guy that can throw it comes in a little bit better than Fields, you're like, ooh, the offense feels different. Yep. So I will give Tomlin a tip of the hat and say, yeah, you made the right call at least through 2 weeks from that decision.
There's certain quarterbacks that, like, when they back up and quickly release the ball, before you see what happens, like as the camera is panning, just from like the way he releases it, or like the speed at which, like, you're assuming in your mind, I don't know if this is how you like, but in my mind, when I'm watching games, when I see the quarterbacks do that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's got somebody open, or like he sees something, because otherwise he wouldn't have thrown it as quickly or with the velocity that he did. And that's the feeling you get with Russell Wilson. With Fields, anytime he released the ball, there was always this like, like, you just didn't know. Like, you didn't know what he was seeing, or like most of the time it was Fields holding on to the ball, which is why you're just like, God, there's nobody open. Like, he's got to have somebody. But like you said, like, there's a very stark difference of like, man, Fields was playing good, and I think at the time we were kind of like, what are the Steelers doing? But now, having seen a few games of Russ, even though it's not like great or even prime Russ, you're just like, yeah, he's better than Fields.
Yeah, it's hard to get ahead of that. And then back to just the NFC South to take a look. The Jags, Titans, we both had them in the order of finish. I think they're going to be. Titans are terrible. The Titans, the only team that out competes them for worst team, which we got right again, which was easy. I can't pat ourselves on the back too much for being like, yeah, the Panthers are going to be terrible. Like, the problem is the Panthers are to the point that, yes, they're a professional football team, but you're like, but it's pretty close. Like, they're bad. They're real bad. Dude, did you see Sean Payton in the post game? with the
when
reporter.
when the dude was like accusing him
He
of
was
like
like,
running up the score or something.
no, they were like, hey, your defense had all these stops. What do you think? And he was like, guys, let's be honest. We knew that that was not a good offense that we were playing against. So this is what we expected to happen. And I was just like, "Go!" Like, it's bad when an opposing coach is like, look, we expected for our defense to get off the field. We would have been upset if they didn't do what you just saw, because that's how bad that offense is on the other side, which we can hop right into it. NFC South.
Yeah,
We all had the Falcons, Bucks, Saints, and then Panthers.
My favorite was when they benched Bryce Young and Andy Dalton comes in, and the guy's like in mid sentence about talking how he's gonna benefit from sitting behind a true professional, and he doesn't even get to finish the sentence, and it's like pick six. It's like, well, maybe they just suck.
I mean, I'm glad he's okay, but it's also humorous to me that it appears that Andy Dalton purposely got in a car wreck to be like, hey, if not, y'all are going to get me murdered behind this offensive line. So I'd rather risk it in front of a semi than play on a Sunday.
That was his Anthony Richardson moment. But he's a professional, so he did it tactfully.
This is by course of injury. The Falcons look like now the clear division favorite after, Mike Evans is going to be gone for probably 4 to 6 weeks, if maybe the end of the year, because you just never know when a hamstring's going to sneak its way back up. They're very difficult to get over quickly, and they're very easy to tweak. And then Chris Godwin, awful ankle injury. He's done for sure for the rest of the year. Who knows when he'll even be back from that. The Saints, you don't know. It's like, is Derek Carr going to come back and look at anything that they get to play the Panthers this week, which is sort of their redeeming success if he does come back, because they absolutely throttled there's no better game for Carr to come back and warm up with than the Panthers. That would be the perfect way for him. I just don't think the Saints have any ability to pull themselves back into the division from where they're standing. I know that theoretically they do, but nothing about the Saints have I sat back and been like, yeah, I'm a believer in this team.
I'm with you on that. I'm not disagreeing with you there. However, only being 2 games back from the Bucks, which without your without your starting quarterback, the Bucks defense is not very good. They looked pedestrian against a Spencer Rattler-led Saints. And that was with the offensive weapons that Bucks no longer have. I don't have any faith in the Saints. However, I'm losing faith quickly in the Bucks' ability to stop other teams and continue winning games. Like, Baker's playing amazingly from like a fantasy perspective, obviously, but like he's carrying that team. So there's no problem with Baker. However, you do need people to throw to, and you also need your defense to stop people. So if the Saints can rebound at all, I think it's going to get closer right there in the middle of that division. But this is, like you said, like this is exactly where we thought every team should be and how they would be. And I mean, we nailed this one.
NFC West. I was the only guy that said the Rams first. You guys had the Niners, and then Rams, Seahawks, Cards. We all had the Seahawks and Cardinals going 3 and 4 respectively. Dude, it's anybody's division right now. Dude, it's an absolute mess.
I don't even know what the most surprising point of this division is. Like, the fact that the Cards are in first, like, is pretty surprising. But like also the fact that they're all like right there at 500 is also just like, dude, what is happening? Like, the Rams look. Getting Puka Nacua back and Cooper Kupp is obviously a huge bump to the offense, but somehow that made their defense better against the Vikings, which that was
surprising.
Out of this world. But as bad as they were playing at one point, to then come out and like come back to beat the Niners was like, what's going on in this division? It's blowing. The Cardinals are playing like the only team where it's like, that's how I expected them to play. Kind of middle of the road, not very good, but like not terrible. But like that's why we had them at last, because we thought the other 3 teams would be better. So it's like, is Is the Cardinals being in first surprising? Yes, but it's like they're in first at 4-4. So it's not like they're like the Steelers, right? The Steelers, I don't think we all thought were going to have as many wins right now at this point in the season that they do. The Cardinals at 4-4, you're like, yeah, that's reasonable. Like I could see that happening, but to be in the first place of that division at 4-4, that's the huge surprising factor.
It goes without saying that if you had told me, hey, at this point in the season, C-Mac still hadn't played when we made these predictions, I'm like, what happened? Did he get in a car wreck? And you're like, no, it was an injury that they knew about all off season. I'm like, what do you mean all off season? Like, I just, for fantasy owners, for bettors, anybody else, it's just like, even us, like making predictions, I'm like, the fact that this man, you're still not sure whether or not he's even going to play this year, which I know they said he's going to, he's on track to. Even when he comes back, their offense, now Brandon Ayuk hasn't done anything. Kittle went off last week, which was good to see. They still have Debo, but from an offensive wide receiver standpoint, they do not look anything as capable as they have the last few years, which is really part of their major regression. Because Ayuk, even before he got hurt, my man had done nothing to signify that contract they got in the offseason. It was bad. And that's why I sit back with the Rams and I'm like, the Rams are getting back their offense. If they can just keep winning division games, the Rams will win the division.
Which, again, let's talk about surprises. Like, I think Purdy is playing pretty decently.
Yeah.
I think Jordan Mason has come in and stepped into that C-Mac role pretty decently, right? So, like, yes, losing C-Mac and having Brandon Ayuk do absolutely nothing are two factors that you think like, oh, that's got to play a huge impact. But having watched the games, I'm like, they're doing fine, but somehow they're 4-4. Like I don't know what's wrong with the Niners. It's really weird.
Well, I mean, they blew 2 second half double. It's Kyle Shanahan's nemesis is being up by 10. I think I told you guys that's his like Vietnam and the rice paddies moment. Like anytime he gets up, he starts hearing, Credence come on. And he's just like, dude, bad, bad sun's on the rise again. Like they cannot get up and win games, which is really the 49ers Achilles heel at this point. Then the two most interesting divisions, which is why we're saving them for last. First is the NFC East. We had the Eagle. All of us had the same thing. Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. The Giants are exactly who we thought they were. We all, I think, picked the Eagles because so many, I think for the past like 15 years, no team has won the division twice. However, I look at it and I'm like, Commanders got a great chance. Like if a team is going to come out of the NFC East that looks the best of these four, it's the Commanders. Jaden Daniels has been playing out of his mind.
Their defense needs work. Big work.
I'm not saying they're going to make it out of the NFC. I'm just saying from the NFC East, the Cowboys for sure don't have a defense. Parsons and Lawrence are out.
They don't have a run game.
Oh, I mean, they might as well have one of us back there running the football at this point. There's no threat from the Cowboys offense. The Eagles are yet again just this team that on paper, I sit back and go, Eagles should be killing teams. Like this should be the number. We sit back and a lot of us, I had the Eagles as the number 1 seed. I think you had the 49ers as the number 1, and then Pops had the Eagles as the number 1 seed. Like, I just sort of sit back and look at it and I go, we all were high on the Eagles. And I think at this point in the season, I wouldn't bet on them to win a playoff game, especially depending on who they play.
Yeah, they've been extremely inconsistent. The second half of the season is going to be really telling for both these teams.
Then NFC North, which is the real. I had Packers, Lions, Bears, Vikings. Pops had Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. You had Packers, Lions, Bears, Vikings. The Vikings, Pops, before we just filmed the college episode and he's got to go to work. he was like, this is the start of the Vikings' downfall, which I'm not. It's one of the ESPN segment. Overreaction or justified? What do you think?
Well, justified in the sense that like they're not this when they were undefeated, everybody was like, holy smokes, like when are they going to lose a game? Like that was the overreaction in my point. So do I think they lose a lot more games going forward? Yes. However, they've been looking really good on both sides of the ball. So like downfall, nah, I don't see it. Like from all of the other teams that we've been watching play, they're still one of the top teams out there. So I don't all of a sudden think they're just going to start going on this slide. But yes, they're probably not going to like, they're not going to go 5-2 over the next 7 games. I'll say that.
The biggest issue for the Vikings is that if you were to take the Vikings and put them in the NFC South, they're the clear favorite. If you put them in the East, really, if you put any of the 4 NFC North teams in a different division, even the Bears, I'd argue they probably are the favorite in any of those divisions. Like it's the most competitive division in football.
As I say, they're not going to go 5-2 over the next 7 games. Looking at their schedule over the next 7 games, they're probably going to go 7-0. Because it's the Colts, the Jags, the Titans, the Bears twice, the Cardinals, and the Falcons. So the Bears twice will be, they'll probably split that one. But Colts, Jags, Titans, Cardinals, like they should beat all 4 of those teams handedly.
I mean, they are for sure. Now that you're talking about it, they're for sure going 5-2 now. Yeah, just because you said they did.
They'll probably lose to the Bears and then like the Falcons.
Yeah,
and they will go 5-2 and they'll be 10-4.
We'll find out. Every week I will give it to them. Every single week I'm like, God, I really like this Lions team. Like, they are the only team right now that I believe out of the NFC would beat the Chiefs.
Yep.
Just because I get this feel that they're sort of this like team of destiny. Like they all believe. Like, I don't know if you get that sense from them. I just feel like everyone on the Lions is like unified in this, like, no, we lost last year. We ain't losing again. Like we're going to win this thing.
So if anything, I would have said, I think they thought they were that team of destiny last year, but I think this is why like we have this like, God, I like this team, is because usually when you feel like you're this team of destiny and it doesn't work out for you, it's like this huge drop off of like, oh, that was our shot and we missed it. And then, reset, we got to like do something. But for them to basically pick right back up where they left off and be like, no, this is who we are. You even know, like last year they had we talked about like, they had this like element of surprise that like they kind of came out of nowhere and it's just like, oh man, the Lions are good. Like it was like this, we hadn't seen them this good, so we were surprised. That's why they're winning so many games. But everybody knew, like there was no surprise this year. Like, hey, watch out for the Lions. They're going to be good. And they're still showing up week in, week out and just putting it to people. Yeah, dude, that's what you want. And like, that's what good organizations are able to do as far as like putting in good teams year in, year out, back to back to back. So yeah, I mean, I still see the Eagles from like a talent perspective. I could see the Eagles beating the Chiefs. And primarily that's just because I've seen the Chiefs play very subpar football. I'm not saying that the Eagles have looked that good. They have the talent to do that if they could just figure out whatever's wrong with them. So we'll see. But I agree with you. Like the Lions are definitely looking like the most dominant team out of the NFC right now.
Which I'll just go now, sort of what we did with the college, I'll do with the pros. If you had to give some predictions mid-season, now not to pat myself on the back, last mid-season prediction, I said Eagles were going to get bounced first round of the playoffs. and them jokers got bounced, and I felt good. So I'll give you the floor to any major predictions that you sort of see that you're like, no, this I feel pretty confident that based upon what I'm seeing right now, I think this is going to happen.
I think I kind of already mentioned it, and I don't know if this is really a major prediction, but like I don't see the Chiefs winning at all. Like it's not going to happen. I just like it's.
Well, here's my question for you: do you see them getting to the game, or do you see them getting bounced before the Super Bowl?
If I had to pick one of those, I would say they're gonna get bounced prior to the Super Bowl, simply because I think there's more. Their threat is higher from the other AFC teams than it is from the NFC teams.
Yeah, 100%. The AFC is the division that if something's going to happen. The only thing that helps the Chiefs with being for as poorly as they've played, right now they own home field advantage, which is a huge factor. However, with that, I keep going back to it. I don't know what it is. It's sort of this like season of underdogs. I feel like the Super Bowl, if you gave me the ability to be like, who do you want to see in the Super Bowl? It's easy. It's Bills Lions. Like, I want to see two teams that have never won it playing, because I know when the clock hits zero that I'm going to get to watch one of these franchises finally be like, we did it. Now, it will probably be the Bills missing a kick in the Super Bowl, and the Lions will walk it off if history has any say. But Josh Pops brought it up before he got off the college episode. Like, Josh Allen's thrown one interception all year. Now, I'm pulling for Buffalo. I get to go up to the Bills, watch them play the Dolphins this week. So I'll get this, a little bit more of a pulling edge for me and sort of my thoughts on it. If I had to give two teams out of the AFC that I think meet your qualifications of beating them, it's A, the Bills, and B, the Ravens. Like, those are the only two teams that I like. Don't get me wrong. I like the Texans. I think they're good. They remind me of Jacksonville a few years ago when they played them. It's just like they're not a complete team. Their defense hasn't looked as good. Offensively, no Nico. Now that Stephon Diggs is done for the season, I just don't know if CJ Stroud's ready for that moment. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson will be. Like, Derrick Henry. The Chiefs have always had problems with Henry. Like, in the AFC Championship game, they had to beat the Titans, and it was a close matchup because Henry kept them in that game with Marcus Mariota. Like, it was tough, and that was a better Chiefs team. Like, I'm with you on that. Like, I can see either the Ravens or the Bills. If I had to pick a team to bounce them before the game, that's them. That'd be my two teams. NFC.
What's your prediction? Do you have a major midseason prediction?
This is tough because some of it's already been like, I want to say we predicted. Okay, I got one. If I had to give a team that's going to play the NFC North in the NFC Championship game, it's the Washington Commanders. They're off. That's how good their offense is and how shoddy the rest of the division is. Like, if I had to give a wild prediction, it's that the NFC Championship game will host the Washington Commanders will be one of those two teams.
I could see it. I totally could see it. Because the Eagles, if they don't win the division, are going to have to come out and play somebody else at home, maybe even like the Packers or the Vikings or something like that, and they could lose. The Commanders are going to get somebody weaker, maybe the Falcons, or maybe even the Rams or the Cardinals or something like
Cowboys?
that. Yeah, I mean, like, it's a possibility. I could totally see that happening.
The Commanders, the thing I like about the Commanders, that offense has that mentality you almost want on defense. Like, you can tell with like Scary Terry, Brian Robson, like all the guys, the offense believes. The offense is like, no, we're good offense. Like,
you might as well hand Jaden Daniels the offensive rookie of the year right now. I mean,
and if you really want to be honest, he's in competition for NFL MVP.
I don't disagree with you.
In the 3 quarterbacks, in my opinion, that are going to compete for the crown are out of the NFC. Now, Josh Allen's out of the AFC, but it's between, in my opinion, Daniels, Mayfield, and Jared Goff. Like those, Jared Goff had a game where he went 18 for 18. Like now I get he didn't have any stats last week. I just thought it was hilarious. It's like the Titans are losing 52-14. And you're like, man, Goff must be lighting it up. They're like, Goff has less than 100 yards pass. I'm like, what? And they're like, and David Montgomery threw for a touchdown pass. You're like, what? Like, in the first half, at halftime, Jared Goff had 28 yards throwing. And I was like, and they're winning by, it was like 35-7. I was like, what happened? Now, it helps that Jahmyr Gibbs took one like 80 yards to the house, and David Montgomery's, that running game could not be stopped. The Titans had no answers for it.
A punt return or a kick return for a touchdown too, but you're right. Like they're just, it's a testament to like they are just a good team all around in all facets of the game. Because to be honest, like we've talked about multiple times how like the Titans suck, but like their defense is the one shining point that they had, and it didn't matter. The Lions were like, please.
Correct. So that would be, that's the only big one that I see out of that. The AFC Jets aren't making the playoffs, which I don't feel like is a reach at all.
At this point is not a big prediction for sure. It's a big swing from where we were at the beginning of the season for sure. But like at this point, yeah, dude, you're losing to the Patriots. Nobody's surprised if you don't make the playoffs.
The crazy thing is out of the AFC, it's like, who's the wild cards? Like this, it's got to be someone out of the NFC or the AFC North. It's either the Steelers or the Bengals, but it's like out of the East, like you're not going to give it to the Jets or the Dolphins or the Pats. Like none of those teams look good. Out of the South, maybe it's the Colts, Texans, and you get one out of the West, maybe the Chargers. Like I don't know who the wild card teams are. I think the division teams are pretty clear front runners right now outside of the NFC South or the AFC South, but the wild cards, I just sort of sit back and I'm like, dude, it's a coin flip.
As far as who I think should get it, and I think I said this during the predictions, it's like I could see both of them coming out of the AFC North. Now, the only reason why I don't think that is the most probable answer is simply because they have to play each other more times than the other teams. You know what I mean? So like just by nature of the beast, one of them has to beat the other. So there's going to be a guaranteed loss somewhere in that division. Whereas like that's not the case if you spread out the wild cards. But as far as like the Steelers,
well, we get 3 wild cards. So I mean, you sit back and look at it, I can easily see it being the Bengals and the Steelers. Easily. And who knows? Maybe Jameis Winston it's sort of nuts. Like it was exactly what we thought after week 1. Everyone was like, yo, y'all need to stick Winston in there. And he comes in there and lights it up. Like he played very, very well. But it was a clear-cut difference between him and Watson. Like Watson's done in Cleveland. Done. There's no chance. There's zero chance he comes back and starts.
Speaking of done, as bad as they're playing, you think Rodgers hangs it up after this year?
Yes.
I think so too. I think we were lulled into this, Tom Brady can play when he's post 40. Like any good Hall of Fame level quarterback could. And I think it's just like, sorry, dude, Rodgers is not Tom Brady. Like as good as Rodgers is and an absolute Hall of Famer, like there is a difference of like you cannot continue to play at that level after a certain point in life. It's just too difficult to do. And Tom Brady was an absolute anomaly in every facet of how he did everything. And that's why he was able to do it. And I think we just assumed, Rodgers could do this as well. And it's very clear, like, no, he can't.
Not to take anything away from Brady, but I will also sit back and go, Brady had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, playoff Lenny that went nuts, like, and Gronk. Like, that's the bigger things to me, and it goes back to like them firing Salah. Like, it didn't make sense at the time just because it's like the season really hasn't developed, and then it now definitely doesn't make more sense because now it's like you signed Hassan Reddick, you bring in Devontae Adams. It's like was he just vehemently opposed to those things? Is that why you got rid of him?
Yeah.
But you're going to override your head coach as the GM and the owner. You're going to say, no, we're going to go out and make these calls. Like, you're going to have to deal with it. That's been the Jets. The Jets don't get the right pieces in. Like, Adams doesn't look like the Adams from Green Bay. Really, he hasn't looked like the same Adams from Green Bay for about 2 seasons now. Outside of his first year in Oakland with Derek Carr, which we sort of chalked it up to just being like, oh, they didn't have great quarterback play. That's why he doesn't look the same. Like, he still doesn't look the same. He's not making this huge difference for them. And it's because the Jets are old. Like, outside of Garrett Wilson, they're just an old football team. Like, when Brady went to Tampa Bay, Mike Evans was, 5 years younger than he is right now? Or 3 to 5 years younger? Chris Godwin was still young. At that point, he was just coming onto the market. Gronk was the old dude, and he still balled out in the Super Bowl. The Jets are just in a position where it's like, dude, you made your bed. Like, this is what you get. Like, in the offseason, they had a moment where they could have drafted a wide receiver. They chose to go offensive line. Like, there were times that you could have added some pieces to this team that you're like, hey, who knows what would have happened? But you stuck a bunch of guys around like Alan Lazard who can't catch out there. Mike Williams thinking that this old dude was going to like come from the Chargers and change things. It's just,
the funny thing is, though, it's like at this stage, like, as bad as we're talking about how the Jets are, and it's just like, gosh, there's so many problems. It's like they win one game and they're in second place in the division. It's like, so that's going to be like their silver lining at the end of the season. They're going to be like, hey, at least we got second place. It's better than what we had been in the past. Like, we're moving up. But it's like,
which is funny because tonight they're favorites against the Texans minus 2.5.
Wild where that is.
I feel like even Vegas is like, no, they're coming. We know it's going to happen sooner or later. I don't know. Like,
maybe they're
Vegas
thinking that just Tank Dell being the only wide receiver available in Houston is going to be a detriment. Like, I don't know. I don't understand the line.
I don't either. We'll find out.
Basically means bet your house on the Jets because everything we think is going to come true this season doesn't. So,
yeah, unless it's Vegas's number one favorite, and then that doesn't work out. Now, I will give Vegas credit. The last few weeks, Vegas been nailing it. I remember when I called you and I was like, yo, the Lions went from 10 points to minus 13.5. You're like, really? Like, you can usually, like, when money's coming in, I think you were talking about, like, if more than $1 million is placed on a team, like by one person, it will usually swing the line half a point in the way that they bet. For a line to go 3.5 points, I think that was even Vegas being like, yo, dog, I think we're about to lose some money. We need to get some money off the Lions.
Late game line moves are usually pretty telling.
Yeah, it sort of sucks because when we do these predictions, we make our predictions on Thursday. And it's like by the time Sunday rolls around, usually by that point, especially when I'm like looking at Vegas lines, I'm like, yeah, we had to pick it when it was minus 10 and now it's minus 8. And it's like, I wouldn't have taken, I would much rather take the 8 than the 10, but I'm stuck now.
Yeah.
It's where it's difficult when Vegas changes it up. But final question, who wins it all? Midseason. Or who's your Super Bowl matchup and who wins it all?
I'm going to go Ravens-Lions.
What we all hoped for last year.
Yeah.
Which the Super Bowl is, where is it? Is it in New Orleans?
I don't know where it is this year.
I think it is in New Orleans. It is in New Orleans. Ooh, having Detroit fans and Baltimore fans in New Orleans. See, New Orleans going to get shot. There'll be a ton of murders. Which did you see that stat? Side note, it was like there hadn't been a murder for like 18 days in New Orleans, and they're like, "Man, what's happening?" It's like Saints are undefeated. They lose a game, or within 3 hours of losing, they're like, "A man's been murdered in the French district."
No.
That was a real thing. I saw that tweet, and I was like, "Man, New Orleans can't win, even with a loss. People are dying." So you got Ravens, Lions,
That's who my mid-season prediction will be.
and who wins?
I'm gonna give it to the Lions.
The only
I'll take it back. I'll give it to the Ravens at this point, and part of it is because I'm still giving the Lions credit for having Aiden Hutchinson, which obviously, I mean, he was just an absolute game wrecker. And it's so sad to see someone of that level caliber on a team like that. You lose him, and now you're trying to replace him. So unless they can make a move like you talked about and replace him, I'll give the Ravens the nod at this point.
I have the Chiefs, and it's because of last year. In terms of from the AFC, who's representing, and the reason for that is this is exactly what we saw last year. It was like poor play that you're like, dude, this team sort of sucks. Like Mahomes' offense doesn't look good, and then they got into the play. The worst thing that can happen is for them to get into the playoffs. And the problem is they're 7-0. It's like they're probably going to get into the playoffs. They're probably going to get home field advantage. The second they get into the playoffs, they are a completely different animal, which I really do believe that once they enter the playoffs, Andy Reid calls the plays because they just look different. And I really think that throws teams off, that now Andy calls the plays, and it makes it so that an entire year of play calling that now you're like got film and like you're going with like, oh, they did this on this down and this on this down. It's like, no, we completely change it because in the postseason, a different guy calls the plays. Like we make it look different through that scheme. They are a different team in the playoffs, and I learned my lesson last year with picking against them in the playoffs. I will not do that again. If they get into the playoffs, then money will be on the Chiefs. On the other side, though, is the Lions. And if you put them against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, give me the Lions. I'll go against Mahomes, and it's because of that. It's that Rocky moment that it's like the first fight, Rocky versus Mr. T. It's like one dude has been living it up in the highlight. It's going to be all about the three-peat. Yeah, it's the Lions' first Super Bowl, but everyone's going to be sort of like, and I think that plays right into Dan Campbell. They're building the poster. They're getting the banner ready. First 3-team-peat. No one's giving you a chance. Like it will fit Dan Campbell so much. And I think Dan Campbell is the arch nemesis to like the Chiefs play calling, because you don't know what you're going to get. You know it's going to be bold. You know it's going to be crazy, but you don't know when it's coming. And I think that putting the Chiefs on their back heels, sign me up.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I just keep going back to the like, we've talked about it on like a week-to-week basis of like every time the Chiefs win a game, the probability of them losing next week goes up. Doesn't like make it where they're going to lose, but like every time they win, the probability goes up. Same thing with like the Panthers. Like the probability of them losing every single game was slim to none. It's possible, but very slim. So every time they lost, it was like they're going to win a game. You just don't know when. And I'm taking that now, just like zooming out a little bit on the Chiefs and just going like, they can't, not that they can't, they typically don't in the NFL get away with suboptimal play for this long. Like, and I get it, they turn into this different team in the playoffs. However, like, I just don't see them continuing to do what they're able to do all the way through and win. And again, why I just said the Ravens is because, like I talked about, the biggest threat for the Chiefs, I think, comes out of the AFC. There's a couple teams that they have to play or that they will have to play that I could see them beating them. Whereas we talked about, like, on the other side of the NFC, like, if the Chiefs do make it to the Super Bowl, yikes, because it's like, you better hope it's the Lions that made it, because if it's not, I don't see any of those other teams beating the Chiefs. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. It's like, if the Chiefs make it, they're probably going to win, but I just don't see them making it because their tougher schedule is going to come out of the AFC.
Yeah. Well, that completes the mid-season review. You got anything else?
Nope. It's a good one.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll check you guys next time.